Planning board?
The people, there we go.
Look at
That's
those
what I
smiling faces.
There you go. There you go.
want. Read it.
So,
That's a big deal. How can you go
my
wrong?
glasses now.
Good.
As you said before.
Oh, yeah.
I'm almost They send something to your phone to shut it down.
Completely under, but I grabbed it right away.
You're lucky.
All right.
I
was thinking of
It's
you.
probably the toilet water.
Can we do that?
Or the fact that you didn't dive right in for it.
There's no time specified. Right. We can take them in any order we want.
Oh, yeah, let me see.
I think we're live.
After 7.
The other party
Wow, that
isn't
thing's
here.
huge.
You're
I'm
on.
gonna put it on.
All right.
Fingers can work. See?
You can actually see it?
Yeah, the fingers work.
Oh, this is for.
Hello, everybody.
For you.
Yeah, tomorrow.
September 11th Planning Board meeting being recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia. We're about to start.
September 11th.
Yeah, so we were just having a little discussion on this. Their other parties aren't here yet, so, or he is here. You wanna, are we allowed to take these out of order, Evan? There's no times on anything.
Yeah, you can take them out.
I believe
7
someone from
PM.
12 Kidder will be here around 7:30.
Okay, if we get, I think these are the guys from Kidder here, right?
It's some interested parties.
Okay. All right, so
You got some other
The
people
zoning
coming.
stuff?
I don't see Loop here.
he's not here, okay. So we'll probably wait on that then? We're just trying to get these guys out of here in a timely fashion so they don't have to listen to all this other stuff. But with that being said, why don't we'll jump on to the new public hearing, fall town meeting zoning article. Chelmsford Planning Board is conducting a public hearing on Wednesday, September 11th. Purpose of receiving public comment for the Town Code, Chapter 195 zoning bylaw as follows: to amend the Section 195-15 rear lots for purposes of deleting subsection A, B, C, E, F, and renumbering the remaining subsections. So what do we got for discussion on that? This
Okay, this
was one of your things, Nan?
This is one of my things.
Okay. Why don't you throw out what you got on it so we can...
Yeah. So this basically makes the rear lots consistent with single lot subdivisions. Right now, what we have is a major inconsistency in the bylaws, such that a developer can develop a rear lot as a single lot subdivision. It requires the same space and same setbacks as is applicable within the zoning district. The driveway, in essence, is not counted in as part of the lot area because it is the street. And it's required to be built to the equipment, what would you say? The sub-road, it's required to be built for heavy equipment,
Right,
which is kind of silly for a driveway.
for driveway, right, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
So this is a proposal to make the rear lot requirements the same, essentially, as the same size as the single lot subdivision. Basically not count the pipe stem in the lot size because it's typically below the width that this modification allows to be counted. So in
Okay.
other words, anything below so many feet wide doesn't get counted in the lot area. So in both cases, the driveway doesn't count in the lot area. And it goes back to the primary precinct, zoning precinct, zoning district sizing for both the lot size and the setbacks.
Okay,
So it's just a matter of making it consistent.
okay. Anybody else
Yeah.
wanna,
Nan, is there an example that you can give, or is there, I mean, what was the impetus for you drafting this article?
We have seen several applications for single lot subdivisions that have come before us that would, as a pipe stem, would go before either before the building inspector or the ZBA instead, if it were simply a back lot. So it's a lot of extra expense on the developer to submit it under a subdivision bylaw that I just don't think's necessary because it serves the same purpose.
I got one, Glenn. To me, it's technically a subdivision, but what's the liability if there's a medical and a fire truck has to, I don't want a fire, I'm always hung up on that, but if the fire department had to bring a truck back there for medical, and say the driveway caves in or cracks, who's liable for the damage? Because we've had that in the past.
Hank, what happens in any other single-family driveway?
We don't go in a driveway, but if it's a real lot,
Yeah.
and you're having a heart attack, we're not gonna lug you out
I think
80 feet.
the fire department usually comes with us with how they want the driveway built.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm
I'm-
asking.
I mean,
I'm
if
asking-
I'm-
It's gotta be 14 feet wide,
That's
it's
right.
gotta be.
yeah.
Well,
And it
I'm
still
just
has to be.
asking, the
This
specs are
doesn't,
still gonna be
this
to
doesn't
hold
get
the
rid
truck.
of, this doesn't get rid of the width. It doesn't get rid of the requirements that there's a turnaround if there's a
Right.
long
All right.
driveway.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
In the
so it
grade.
still provides access for fire trucks. It doesn't require that big circle at the top.
Right, they can back
that
out. We've done
They could
that.
back out, but it does require that there's a bypass space if the driveway's longer than 250 feet. So, but the point is, it doesn't require the sub-construction of a street. Yeah.
Sidewalk.
So as it is now, a rear lot is 80,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And under this, it'll be whatever the underlying zoning
That's right.
is. So RC, it would be
It would be
20,000.
20, under RB, it would be 40.
RA, it'd be 60.
That's right. So it would be the same size as any other lot
Okay.
in that zoning district.
In which, if the people had the land back there, they could come in with a private road plan anyhow and put a single house back there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they want to come in with a subdivision, they certainly can, but
Right.
I question why anybody would go to that expense.
Right.
Can the driveway of the rear lot go through the front lot?
I did not include anything about that. I know that
That's
I've
kind
heard some sentiment lately that believes that
Like the thing on
it
Western
should
Street.
be amended, but I don't think we're within the time frame to make that amendment at this point in time.
We define frontage as requiring access over your own frontage. So
We could throw that wording in there.
That was in there, but the
Okay.
Westford received a variance from that provision.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Evan, is that
Can we word this that there can't be a variance given?
No.
No. Okay.
Anyone has the legal right to
Yeah.
apply for a
Apply for,
variance.
okay.
So the driveway comes over whose property?
Comes over the frontage in which a lot is being served.
So are they giving them an easement?
So
Well,
the
they'd
way
have to
frontage,
own
the
the
way
land.
frontage is defined is that you can't, you're not allowed to have a common driveway.
Right.
Your access to the house that's being served has to have access from the frontage over your own property.
So basically, if two properties wanted to have a common driveway, it would have to be a subdivision, a two-property subdivision with a street, in essence, not a driveway.
Well, and another
And
thing,
each of those would have to have frontage on that street.
if this were to go forward, I would like to see that 50 brought down to the same specification as the private road at 40, instead of having it at 50, keep it consistent. You know, that- 'cause you're gonna have the same thing, if a guy only has 40, he's gonna come in for a private road and go through the expense with this private driveway.
Evan, is that a change that we can make at this time? Does it change scope? Or could we, I mean, I'm concerned that, I thought that we could only make changes on the floor at this point.
So if you have to pull it, you have to pull it. Is it that much of a
This is the first time we're discussing it.
Yeah, so if it's not ready,
And with-
Talking about changing that from 50 to 40.
I mean, I can tell you for sure that we're gonna lose lose a historic property if we can't get this through this time.
well,
That's just true.
yeah, but we shouldn't be changing it for that purpose, right?
We're not changing it for that purpose, but there is a timing contingency on it.
I think because the change that's being proposed is less restrictive, it's going further than what was
Yeah.
noticed. I think that's beyond the scope of the original proposal.
Okay.
I mean, it wouldn't make a difference whether you wanted to change it here or on the
Yeah.
floor at town meeting. It would still.
It would still be beyond the scope. So it's something that we could change the next
could-
time.
Change it next spring then.
We could change that next spring, so we could put this forward
Yeah, put it,
and change make these changes now and then make another
No.
change next spring? No?
I'm asking,
Oh.
what's everybody think on it?
I don't know, the rationale, I think I understand.
I kind of can see it.
Yeah.
I think it'll open up a lot of opportunities for people.
I think there's a handful, but
Not a lot, but
it's not much.
But if you're saying
But
they'll
there are
still
some.
have to do the work if it's not 40,
Right,
then why
Yeah.
not wait? and
Right.
then- And then do it the way we want to do it.
right. But as you were saying, we could just amend it at next town meeting
can
to
simply
change.
tweak it
just
next
change
time.
the
Depending on what
number.
our experience is.
Yeah,
And
depending
see
on
how
what
many
we see.
people come in. It's not a game changer if it's 50 or 40. It's just, if you keep it consistent with what the other rule is 40 feet. I'm just thinking if you kept it consistent, it's just,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
Which makes sense, I think, if you're
Yeah.
going to do it.
But I would rather do that as a second
Okay.
change to
You
it.
got anything, Donald? No? Anything else, Henry? We'll open it up to the public and see what the public has to say about this. And Colleen's over there
Biting
chomping at the bit.
So, Colleen Stansfield, I'm a precinct 1 town meeting rep, so I am against this 100%. The 80,000 square feet was put there for a reason. People are not supposed to live behind people, in your backyard. So if this gets put down to 40,000, I think it'll affect neighborhoods. I think Mike's neighborhood is a perfect example that you would get something behind you from the other side. And then RC is also only a 20,000 square foot district. I don't think it should be allowed in RC. And I think the way it is now was done that way for a purpose. She's talking about the construction costs for a single lot subdivision. You guys regularly waive those build-out costs. So it's really not a problem. The 50 feet should stay, the 80,000 should stay. And I will tell you, as a ZBA member, as staff, we see these, and the people come out in droves. We have one group that fought a small lot on, I think it was Parker, or was it Old Stage? And they are coming out for every small lot. There was another one that Mr. Emo Hool had over off of, what was that one? I forget the name, Bentley. And that was a over 40,000 square foot lot that would have been a buildable lot had it had the frontage. It did not have the frontage. It needed to be 80,000 square feet. The whole neighborhood came out against it. This is not something that they would want to see. Marrow's up in North Chelmsford, another big lot in a small lot neighborhood. The neighborhood did not want to see that. This is not something that this town will like, and I guarantee it will go down at town meeting. This is not something that the neighborhoods like. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? All right, with that being said, what do we, does somebody want to,
Well, I can first move to close the public hearing.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then whatever else you feel like doing,
Well, I guess, what are our options here? We would either
either
vote to
endorse
present-
it.
endorse it,
Or
Right now, I'm not endorsing it, just so.
Yeah, if you want to do a poll, I'm not either.
Okay, there's two. Mike?
I'm not endorsing it this time.
Okay,
It's just that I just think that we didn't see it last meeting.
right.
We saw it at the end of last meeting. We didn't see this chart, the comparison chart last meeting. We see that just
Right.
now. We don't have enough time to review this properly.
Right.
So I don't think it should go in front of the town meeting at this point.
I'm kind of, not to step, but go ahead, Mike. What's your,
Go either way. I don't think it's a bad idea.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think this would be better served to hold off till spring. Right, bring it before the spring town meeting. We can make all the changes. We get some other stuff we're gonna be bringing back at the spring as well, and I know we gotta.
So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
And, you know, I think the message around the table is that most of these articles that we are putting forward for fall town meeting were not prepared and discussed far enough in advance by this by this board to meet the expectations of the board to have adequate roundtables on working meetings.
right.
We ended up, you know, we certainly discussed them way back in January, but we really didn't get around to working pretty much any of them as a board. So I'm not sure if this is the position that we take, that we'll be putting forward much of anything this fall. So think about that, guys. The other thing I'm concerned about, and it applies to almost all of the articles that we have here, is a sentiment by the citizens of the town that we're a town of great big lots with wide open spaces. And when you look at the statistics from the assessor's database, what it says is that's just not true. While we have a number of neighborhoods that do indeed have 1 acre and 1 acre plus lots, the reality is that that's not the majority of town, that much of our town is indeed very, very small lots. The statistics that I gave you tonight for a new discussion article has some interesting numbers in it. For RA that requires 60,000 square feet,
We need to just hand it to Glenn.
well, I'll be happy to hand it out, and you can see the numbers. Forget about what's at the top for the time being. It is new work, but the numbers that are in here are of interest. And if you look at, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4th and 5th white lines. So in RA, the number of lots that meet or exceed the 60,000 square feet minimum required zoning is under 10%.
Nancy, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I can understand all this, I can understand what, so are we trying just to build out the rest of the town, or what are we trying to do?
I certainly don't think we're trying to build out the rest of the town, but I would think that we are trying to make available new housing for our new entry and our seniors that are looking to, empty nesters that are looking for smaller housing. And that's not going to be 1 acre lots in either case. But we have a demand for housing, for the entry market, and for the senior citizen market.
What's to say, if you put this, if this goes through, and you have a 1 acre lot behind a 1,400 square foot house, that a guy isn't gonna take that 1 acre lot and put a 3,900 square foot house on it. That's
Absolutely
exactly
nothing,
That's
but,
exactly what I'd do.
but if he wants to put a 3,900 square foot house on that lot, he can do it today
Right.
as a single lot subdivision. There is nothing
Well, no,
today
I'm
that
talking on-
prevents him from building on a 1 acre back lot.
Well, yeah, there is. The
Well, if
front,
it's a single lot.
80,000, that's what.
that's the whole rear
All he
lot
has to
thing.
do is submit it as a subdivision instead of a back lot.
But he'd need more than an acre because they'd have to put a driveway in.
You do under this single lot, under this back lot as
But on
well,
the-
because you can't count the driveway.
But on the private road, that driveway doesn't get counted, that driveway gets separated as a road, not as,
Take a look at this. If it's less than 50 feet, you can't count it, which means your pipe stem doesn't count toward your lot area. You have to have more space. It does exactly the same thing the subdivision does. The road doesn't count. You have to get your acreage in the back and not inclusive of the road in either case.
so you'd be
This simply-
eliminating the private road rule as well with this.
Yeah, the only thing it does is get rid of the concept of a private road. It becomes a driveway.
Can I say something with this? I know I'm not an expert, but what this is gonna do is people gonna be building houses in their back lots. And if y'all living next to and you have a pool, now you have a house overlooking your pool and everybody's gonna be looking, you're gonna have no privacy, number one. Number two, it's gonna help a handful of people and it's gonna affect a lot more people in a negative way. And I think this is just self-serving. I think this is a bad idea.
Hank, if they want to build on that lot, they can do it today as a single lot subdivision. They can already build there.
They have to have the proper roads and the proper setbacks and the
Well, they have to
proper-
build the road and and because
We're
it's a
making it
subdivision,
easier.
we're making it
for
easier.
them. Well, why
Sure.
make it easier? I mean.
Why
sooner-
not?
Sooner or later, we're not gonna have any land.
Right.
And we're gonna have still a demand for building, and we're not gonna be able to accommodate people. So you know what? Why are we gonna, pardon my French, rape the town over open space to accommodate like 9% of the people that don't really need it? I mean, if people need that to build a house in their back lot to make money or whatever the problem is, I just think it's a bad idea. I just think we wouldn't have had these rules in place all these years if it was a good idea. We would let anybody build on anything. And I know I'm looking at a whole different perspective than you guys, but I just think it's a bad idea. That's it.
Well,
Take a vote, move it on.
are we gonna pull this out and wait till spring?
Yeah, vote on it.
Vote on it.
I think you've got the vote to do that.
No?
Nobody
Take
wanna
your
make
vote.
Well, I don't think we have
Vote
supposed to move forward to this town meeting, so if that's, if we're still interested in this article, then we defer.
We'll
to
bring it
spring.
back for spring?
I don't
If
think the votes
anyone's
are there.
still
Do we have to take an action?
Yeah, you have to take an action to pull it.
Draw.
Okay, we get a.
If that's what you want to do.
All right, I'll put something forward that we make a motion to withdraw this article from this particular time.
Oh,
I'll
we gotta
second.
close the public hearing first?
We already did
or-
close
We did.
Yeah, we did.
We got a motion and a second. Gonna vote? All in favor of withdrawing? Right? Opposed? So it's 2,
Like, do you
4,
vote?
Mike?
5 to 1.5.
Mike, are you abstaining?
I'll abstain, why not? I haven't done that in a long time.
Okay. That gets that out of the way. All right. The rest of the fall town meeting stuff.
So you need to take recommendations to
Rec-
go forward
Okay.
on all the ones you closed last meeting.
Okay.
So they're all closed. We're just gonna-
Article, what is it?
Oh, I'll figure it
Well, the first one, number 1, to amend section 195-8, non-conforming use and structures, subsection 195.8.e, 1 by right non-conforming single and two-family structures for the purpose of amending applicable provisions and
That's the end. that's where she stopped.
Typewriter run out of ink?
Dot, dot, dot.
Got it all in there.
All right.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, what
This one is.
do we want to recommend on that? You're gonna want to recommend that to go forward?
Which
I would
one is
make a
this?
vote.
The pre-existing non-conforming?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, this is the one for like the Westlands that we were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion to
Make a
recommend?
motion to,
I'll second.
There we go. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That one goes forward.
Hold on, you guys went too fast for me. Henry made the motion, Mike seconded?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was it voted?
Unanimous.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Abstain.
Abstain. One
Abstained. All right.
Nancy
Let's see, to
abstains.
amend Article 7,
Signs and out-
signs and outdoor lighting,
getting rid of the advisory
get
committee.
rid of the advisory committee.
Move to
Make a motion to
Okay.
move for article forward.
second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That one goes to the town meeting.
One of-
And-
Nancy's abstaining
You're
again.
standing on that one?
Oh,
Okay.
no, I
You're
vote
in?
for that. I'm
Right.
in.
Point of order.
Unanimous.
So are you
Recommending.
recommending it?
Recommend.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But that's what
I gotta write that up for you.
All right. Number 3, to amend the planned open space development. Remove the minimum 10 acre down to 5 acre. What do you think on that one?
I'll recommend it goes forwards.
I'm gonna second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Can we ask a question?
Oh, Mike got a question.
We didn't get into discussions last meeting. Do the 5 acres have to be continuous?
No.
No.
We already told us that you could take and donate,
So-
you could donate a piece of land on the other side of town,
The,
but
the 5 acres associated with the cluster development
Yes.
need to be contiguous. The open space that's required does not need to be contiguous.
So
The
if
o-
you,
The 5 acres has nothing
So
to
right
do with
there,
the
the
required
open
open
space.
space.
so if you own
Right.
5 acres, you own 3 acres here, 2 acres here,
they have to be
You-
contiguous.
you want to put the development on the 3 and give the 2.
And the
So
2 can be
the-
across the other side of town?
It's not exactly how it's written.
Okay, I would like to see the 2 in the same neighborhood would be.
Should be in the
So
same
the way
neighborhood.
it's written is that we're taking, you need 10 acres currently
Yep,
to qualify to apply for a cluster subdivision. The way it's written now is that 10 goes down to 5.
yep.
That's the raw land you need to build the houses on the 5 acres. The new provision about non-contiguous was related specifically to the open space. So if the property owner had 5 acres in one neighborhood, and they happen to have some acreage in a different neighborhood, they could build the cluster on the 5 acres and work with the planning board to donate non-contiguous land associated with the housing
I
development.
think the key to that is they gotta work with the planning board too to decide,
But why
that
would-
if it's worth it or not.
Absolutely.
Why would anybody want to donate additional land? If you're doing a 5 acre, the reason for it is to build 5 houses on a smaller parcel and have the open space. So if you got 5 acres and you're gonna do your cluster right there with the open space on that cluster, where does the other 2 acres, why would that even matter?
All right, I'll take a look at my land. They brought it up, I didn't even qualify, I got 40 acres. All right, mine was put together in pieces. I've got a 1 acre piece across the street. It's not contiguous, it's got a street in between it. I've got 7 acres up the street up further, non-contiguous. It's got a driveway that goes between and breaks it up. Right now, they just don't qualify.
And with this, they wouldn't either.
They would if I want to donate the 7 acres down the street and make a deal with the town that they can do something on the other. I'm looking at Coolis's land that's right next to me. They got a subdivision coming on that too. They get the same thing. They got another piece of land that's, you can almost throw a ball and hit it from there.
But what I'm
From their
saying though
land.
is, if you don't have the 5,
I got we got the 5.
right,
So
you're
so I
fine.
understand what you're saying. The analysis that I did for the board,
yeah,
remember those maps?
yep.
That was based upon my understanding as to what we were talking about. If we were to do an analysis under your scenario, where any single property owner had 5 acres scattered around town, that would be a totally different analysis.
No, it wouldn't be 5 acres. If you get the 5 acre thing,
What you mentioned earlier was if you own 3 here and 2 here, that's
Right,
5.
that's 5.
You build your cluster on the 3 acres.
and
you
then the
work
2
with
acres would be the open space.
Right. That's not how it's written. That was never how I
You're
interpreted
gonna
our
have to,
conversation.
But I
there's
think
gonna have
the
to be
way
at least
Henry's
one
talking-
5 acre chunk.
If you got a 5 acre
Minimum.
chunk,
One
you're still,
5
you're
acre
still
chunk somewhere.
gonna put
Yeah.
5 houses on that 5 acres, and you're gonna stuff them in one corner, and 2 acres of that 5 acres is going to be your open space. So
I hear what you're
why
saying.
would you bother giving the other 2 or 5 or 7 or 13 acres? You know what I mean? Nobody would do that.
How does it work now? The 10 acres.
It's contiguous.
So you have
But
to have
it-
all 10 acres right there.
Because the open space
Including
is
the open
on site.
space,
That's
right.
required to be
So
on
on
site.
this one with the 5 acres, does all 5 acres have to be, the open space have to be on site?
No,
No.
that's one of the amendments.
Then we should put something in here that it has to be within that neighborhood.
Within the neighborhood.
Because
that's-
if there was something on the north
well, it's-
side and something, another property on the south
The-
side, wouldn't work.
The location of the off-site's at the discretion of the planning board via special permit. So that's all you need to say, because then the planning board can make a case-by-case determination.
Yeah, I think we get.
If the board's intent was to do what Glenn is suggesting, then
I think it just makes more sense.
I completely missed it, and we may have to, kind of pull this one and revisit. It's not written in that manner.
Well, it strikes me that what we're doing here is a moderate change to our existing practice. We may very well find out later on that we want to make additional change to the practice.
Right.
But I think this change, certainly, it's,
Could we go forward with this the way it is and then modify it in the spring?
and see what happens.
And I
See
think
what
that's- I
happens.
think that's
See
the
who comes
logical-
forward.
So what's the
I'm
minimum?
fine with that. I just,
Gonna have to
I
start
don't
with
think anybody
5.
would
The minimum's 5.
You gotta have
donate
to
the
have
extra
chunk.
land. I
Right,
just
yeah.
don't think they would.
There's just not many 10-acre pieces of land left in town.
No.
Nobody's using.
No, I understand, I understand that. I agree with the 5 acres
Yeah.
and that's fine. I think the thought is if you had 3 acres at one location, you put all your houses on the 3 acres, and your other 2 acres are on the other side of town,
I don't like
that's a
that.
no-go.
But if it's in the same neighborhood,
If it's in the same neighborhood down the
like
street, or
you
you
just
can hit
said,
a
it's
ball
across
to
the
it,
street,
that's something different.
Right.
That's in the same
That-
neighborhood.
that
So I think what Henry's initial thought was, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have 5 acres, while you can yield out, you're only gonna yield out three to
lots
maybe
probably,
4,
yeah.
because you got the roadway, and
That's right.
25% of the 5 acres needs to be open space.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think under your scenario, what you were talking about is, there are property owners who own 5+ acres.
Yeah.
And some of them may own other property around town. So this methodology still works. What
Right.
you're suggesting may be the next iteration of it, somewhere down the road.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right, what do we want to, you want to throw a motion out there to send that one forward to
I'll make a recommendation to move it forward.
I will second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We got unanimous on that.
Mike, the
Oh.
same.
You're out? Okay. We
I
got,
just think we should put
4,
it right going in the first time and not
6
have
to
to
1.
do it twice.
Right. Okay. All right, Community Enhancement and Investment Overlay District. Residential uses to delete the prohibition of multifamily within the IA zoning districts. This is so we can have multifamily in the IAs in,
Under the
Seaoid.
Seaoid.
I think everybody was kind of in favor of that. You want to?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, given the way development of these areas is actually taking place. Now, we don't currently have the threat of 40Bs, which was always able to trump this and put housing on IA anyway. But I think this is
There isn't
consistent
really
with
a
what
lot
we're
of
doing.
land that doesn't already
Yeah.
have it on it too, because
Right.
the 129 already has it.
Right.
Right.
So I'm all for it. I think we
I
should
mean,
go with
Tech
it.
Drive already has housing.
Yeah. I think it's a
The
good
mills
thing.
already have housing.
One of the comments that was made at the open hearing
Yes, there were
was that were pretty legitimate, was the area regarding the, setbacks and the residential pieces of the IA. Are we looking at that? I mean, I know it's underlying, but there's no underlying in IA residential setbacks.
Should we, well, we can't add that in.
We can't add now, we're too late
We
now.
can't
This
add
should've-
it.
this should have been done.
And we already have that covered for residential in commercial
Okay.
under the COID.
It's in the COA.
So it's, yeah,
It's under the COID, okay.
it's under the yeah, there's residential under the COID already. When we put through the COID, I fought to exclude residential from IA on the basis that I thought we should be trying to maintain the higher level jobs, the structures for the higher level jobs. And what I'm seeing in terms of development just is supporting the reality that there's more of a need for housing in those areas, more of a demand for housing in those areas, and that we already have housing in those areas. So this simply reflects what's in current use.
Okay.
So I'll just bring this up because I anticipate that this question or comment will be made between now and town meeting or at town meeting. It's just kind of more of a policy question than whether it's good zoning or bad zoning. The notion may be that by adopting this, you are further incentivizing commercial industrial properties to convert to residential. And while we as planners may think that that is a good planning, land use, and zoning policy, between now and town meeting, there'll be other parties that have other perspectives. So if one of those perspectives is trying to maintain your CIP or increase your CIP, providing further incentives to convert commercial industrial property to residential, may not be a good policy. So again, I just bring that to your attention. I know that's not something that we typically don't. I'm beginning to hear that being bandied about, so I wanted to bring that to your attention, just so you weren't.
Okay.
How much what land are we talking about?
We're talking Tech Drive, parts of Princeton and Middlesex Street near the Mills, part of Tingsboro Street near the town of Tingsboro.
That pretty much.
That's pretty much it.
That pretty
yeah.
much covers it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that it's a
No, I mean, just-
that there's a lot of opportunity. But as Nan pointed out, that is where the market views Chelmsford. And as we've seen from 129, if the market embraces it, they will take you up on that offer.
Yeah.
And certainly, as you know, some neighborhoods, multifamily is a better option than industrial or commercial, but it's case by case. From a townwide perspective, that's kind of it's like a townwide discussion policy.
So I think, Evan, that's a good reflection in terms of potential opposition for desiring more commercial industrial development as opposed to housing. I think we can also expect to see opposition to this for exactly the same reason that we heard before in terms of opposition to new housing across anywhere in town. So I don't know that this is going to be real popular, but I think that it's good planning.
Okay. Well, let's see how the cards fall.
Yeah.
Are we voting or are we?
Let's vote.
Okay. Aye.
No, we need a
Need a motion.
Didn't you already move
Motion
it?
to
Oh.
endorse.
No, I didn't.
Motion
I
to
shall move-
endorse.
I shall move to endorse.
We
Oh,
got
you
a
move?
second?
I'll second if somebody's.
All right, we got a motion and a second. I think Mike threw them both out.
No, I threw out the motion.
Okay, Mike got the second. All
Yeah.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Goes forward.
What was that, 7-0?
Unanimous.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, new zoning bylaw for the historical preservation.
Yes, that one.
All right, who wants to talk on that first? Go ahead, Nan.
I'm probably the only one that's going to talk on that. All right, so this zoning article is not new, Mike. It's been in progress now for about 2 years. We've been back and forth on it. We took it to town meeting, last fall? Mm-hmm. And it was voted down. It has gone through considerable, well, it has gone through some significant changes. I've been working with the Historical Commission, and this article is to be jointly submitted by the Historical Commission and the Planning Board. They have endorsed it at this point. The major changes that were causing consternation at the last town meeting vote that have been changed. The original proposal permitted three-family in a select qualifying historical structures, but it allowed an extra three units in accessory structures on the same property. This removes those units in accessory structures, the extra 3 units. So it does not prohibit putting a unit in an accessory structure, but it only allows 3 total. Okay? And not 6. There was concern that it was based on a 75-year-old property as one of the qualifications. We changed that to simply stop it at 1938, like the current two-family by right. So basically, the bylaws today allow anything that was built before 38 to be converted to a two-family with ZBA approval, with a ZBA application. This would cap it at the same time frame, and it would embed that old two-family article into this new bylaw. What this does is allows an extra unit if the owner puts it under historical preservation restrictions. It provides 2 different options, and that's the third change, is that we tightened up the requirements in terms of historical preservation requirements, in terms of qualifying and in terms of the protection that's afforded. So if it's put under the state protection, it's effectively forever. If it's put under the town protection, it's a maximum of 30 years. And it has different qualifications in terms of which program they can qualify for. The third piece of this tightening the historic qualifications is that this specifically limits the applicability of those 3 families to properties that are listed by the Chelmsford Historic Society as historically significant properties. So there's a couple hundred in town that are considered historically significant. Of that couple hundred, there are there's 100 of the properties that could qualify as 3 families because it requires enough space in terms of land, and it requires enough space in terms of square footage of the property to carry 3 units. So there's basically 100 properties that this 3-family bonus would fit into that meet the requirements of being historically significant, being deemed historically significant, having enough land, and being large enough to handle 3 families. What it keeps is the requirement that parking be in the side or backyards. That does not permit parking in the front yards, so it's it does come through the planning board for approval, so it's a site plan approval, which means the parking gets reviewed with that application.
So the third unit, is it all built into the same building, or are you proposing to somebody could stick another house off to the side?
There's nothing that prohibits it from being in an accessory structure, but it has to be in a historically significant structure. So you can't just build another unit, another house off to the side, because that's not going to be historically significant.
It would have to be built to the same standards as the historic house.
No,
It won't have the age. It has to
No,
be
no, but
built
I'm saying
before
the same
38.
architecture.
No.
No, it has to be built before 1938.
For example, if the place has a carriage barn,
Yeah,
the carriage barn might well qualify.
the carriage barn might qualify as a
Okay.
historically
So,
significant.
But theoretically, your thought is that a big old historic house, you're gonna turn that house itself into a three-family.
It's permitted today to be turned into a two-family
Right,
But there must be
with
attached.
no restrictions.
right.
With no preservation restrictions. This allows it to be turned into a three-family if and only if they place historic preservation restrictions on it.
I get it, okay.
So, and it's only like 100 properties. So we have, everything on this map I just gave you today qualifies for two-family under today's bylaws. So the yellow colors, the green colors, and the pinkish orange colors all qualify to be two families, to be converted. The ones in yellow have already been converted. It's like 297 properties, 279 properties. Okay?
Yep.
And they've been converted from everything from 2 families to 8 families.
Okay.
All right? The ones in green qualify, have not been converted, but they qualify to be converted to 2 families. And the ones in orange qualify to be converted to 2 families. The ones in orange, and only the ones in orange, qualify to be converted to 3 families with a historic preservation restriction.
Okay. Is the Historic Commission on board with this?
Yes, they are, finally.
No, I don't particularly have a problem with it. I don't think anybody will do it.
I don't know if anybody will do it, but the problem is that we
2 to
can't.
3, now you gotta sprinkle the
Yeah.
whole house. I don't think anybody's gonna bear the
Well,
expense.
well, that's it, is,
It's up to them.
is to
doesn't
bring it
matter
up
me.
to code,
Right.
and to convert it to a 3-family, you have a lot of expense.
Oh, done.
You have a huge amount of expense.
Economically
Yeah.
unfeasible to do, but you
Yeah, so,
wanna, I don't have a problem.
you know,
with-
the only way to get anybody to do that and not tear these places down is to give them some sort of a benefit to doing it. And the benefit in this case is, well, there's actually 2 benefits written in here. One is that you can split a lot into a subsidized lot with historic preservation restrictions. And the other one is that you can do a 3-family to get that extra unit for income.
We'll run around and see what
this-
everybody else has
I
to
mean,
say.
there is no way to say you're not allowed to tear it down.
Yeah.
But we can provide some bonus to try and get them not to.
You got something on it, Mike?
I'm just a fan of historic houses,
Yeah,
seeing as I live in one and I'm getting historic myself.
yeah.
So, I think it gives us at least some potential incentive. How effective it's going to be overall, I don't know.
No.
But I certainly see it as positive, so I'm
Okay.
for it.
Mike, what do you,
No comment.
no comment on Mike? Henry?
I think I'm gonna pass on voting on it, and the only reason I'm gonna pass on voting on it is, I'm not quite sure, my house might qualify, I may actually own 2 houses in town that qualify for this. I know I got the carriage house as part of my house too, that could possibly carry, and I just,
So you're
it's a
thinking
conflict for me.
conflict?
I'm just gonna abstain.
That's a good question, a good point to bring up.
In which case, I would have to abstain, and Mike
You
would
got
have
what
to
I-
abstain.
You got 3 out the
And,
windows, so there's not,
No,
You know.
I don't see this as a.
What is, with the
Paul,
rear,
does that call, does that,
the rear lot?
is there anything to do with conflict of interest with that, if they own a historic house?
That would qualify?
I don't think so.
No, I think it's
No
worth,
matter
it's
what
worth
you
saying
do
that
with
that's the
regard
case.
to voting
Yeah.
We're just
on
recommending to
zones,
the,
Yeah.
If you own property in town, it's gonna have some sort of impact.
Yeah.
you know, so that answered that. Tim, you got any comment on this?
I was just questioning the rear lot with the historic. Can you just explain that to, single subdivision?
Yeah, let me see.
single-family dwelling to create one additional building lot.
So that's the issue of being able to split the lot into subsized lots.
Is that still with this part of this article, or is that
That's
with the
still,
article we
that's
already
still
just
with,
talked?
that's still part of this article. So there's two bonuses in here that can be had for placing one of these properties under historic preservation. One is to gain a additional building lot, that's an undersized building lot, and the other one is to gain a additional rental unit, in essence.
If somebody came in and said they wanted to do both,
There's nothing in here that says you can't do both.
you can't?
There's
So if
nothing,
somebody wanted
there's
to come in and
nothing in
say-
here that says you can't do both.
So if somebody come in and said, I want to change the main house into a three-family, and then put a new house over it.
There are limits on the size of the lots that qualify for the three-family,
Okay,
and there are limits on the reduction for splitting the lots.
okay.
And what are those limits?
And the limits are the same.
So what's the limit, what's the size
So
lot
it's-
that you can
it's-
put a second house in the back?
50% of the minimum lot size for that district, which,
Underlaying.
based on these numbers I gave you, is very prevalently used.
So 50,
It's not like
say
it's
it's in an
odd.
RC zone, you got a big old historic house,
So they could do
and
it.
the guy has 75,000 square feet. He could come in, take that three-family, or the historic, make it a three-family,
Mm-hmm.
and stick a single-family on the remaining 35,000 square feet.
Yeah,
No, technically, can't he
Well-
put 3 buildings on that
And-
lot?
And then,
Yeah.
Because if
you
you were
had a
saying it's
carriage
half the size in RC is 10,000 square
it only
feet.
allows you one.
Just allows you one?
It only allows you one.
Okay.
Alright.
And that's in
And-
there's only one?
Yeah. Yeah, it only allows you one.
no supersizing.
I'm not
add-
in favor of it with giving an extra lot for that. So I'm gonna pass. I wouldn't.
Donald, what's your thoughts?
I think I have to agree with Tim. I'm not in favor of an extra lot in the back. And, you know, there's, as Nan noted, there are a number of historic homes already. Some have obviously been converted, but many aren't. I'm not sure I see total upside to the benefit of this article.
Hey, Glenn,
We're going around the board, why don't we throw it up for a vote and see where it's
Glenn,
at? Oh, got Hank down
I
there,
got
sorry,
one.
Hank.
what's the incentive of these people to maintain their historic houses once they get these additional units?
Under preservation restrictions, they are legally required to maintain these houses and maintain them within the architectural constraints that are written into their contract, their preservation contract, and that the Historical Commission has the ability to place fines on them if they don't maintain it.
Well, the reason I ask is because I know a lot of historic homes where the people are elderly
Yeah?
and they're just getting run down, they can't afford to maintain it. And just like my brother, it'll sit there and rot and then they have to tear it down. It's not feasible to keep it. So I don't think this is gonna help preserve homes like that, especially if they don't put on a historic register. I think there should be a tax incentive for these people to, you know, forego, say, 3 years of taxes so they can put that money into their houses and keep it up. Because the problem is they're not keeping them up, like North Road with Billy Harvey. That house is almost a tear down. And that's what I've seen it all along. People buy the house, they sit on it for a year and they tear it down. We need to get
That's what we're
incentives.
trying to prevent with
But we
this.
need, the elderly people aren't gonna do that. They don't, you know, these people with the houses, they're not gonna put on historic and put a third unit up there. They're gonna have to sell it, and the contractor's more savvy than they are, and they're gonna let it sit, let it,
That's what's
Kid.
happening today, Hank, is the contractors buy up these properties, they request a tear down. The Historic Commission places a 1-year moratorium on that tear down. They wait it out, and the house goes away. We're trying to provide an option that will give financial incentives to the developers to restore and maintain those properties instead of tearing them down.
But my idea was to keep the homeowner in place, give them a tax incentive so they can forgo paying the taxes and put the money into preserving the house.
If-
With the stipulation, they do it in
One, we're
other
not
states.
allowed to put taxes
They do
into
it in other
individual.
states. They do.
I
They
don't
can-
believe we're allowed to put,
I think today.
I know CPC funds can't go
Take a beautiful
to it.
historic home, and then now you've got a house right behind it, which we were just talking about, we don't want to see, so.
I'm just saying, I researched this, there's other states that do that, they give them a tax break, but they have to put the money into the home, they have to stay in it for so many years, they have to, there's a lot of stipulations, but it lets the homeowner stay, right, but it helps the homeowner stay in their house without selling to a developer. Like Carlisle Road, there's a lot of them.
Okay.
So, Nan, to your earlier comment, if there's a demolition delay up for a year, and for whatever reason the house is not considered historic, what's the value of an historic home if it's not considered?
If the house is not considered historic, they don't place a demo delay on it. The demo delay can only be placed on a house that's considered historic. All right? So if it's an old house and it's not considered historic, they don't have the right to place a demo delay on it. It just gets raised. If it is considered historic, then the Historic Commission can place a 1-year delay on raising it.
But if it's not yet known if it's historic, doesn't that give the commission an opportunity to research whether or not there was something
They do.
significant happening at that house?
They do.
That was the point of the demolition delay.
Yeah, so when they apply for the demo delay, if the house has not already been appraised for historic significance, the owner that's submitting the application has to pay for the evaluation of whether or not it's a historic value. If it is deemed of historic value, the Historic Commission will indeed place a 1-year moratorium. If it is not deemed of historic value, they simply grant the request for demolition. Okay? If it's not considered of historic value, this doesn't come in play at all. This is totally, completely irrelevant.
Right.
So this is only relevant if it's considered historic, and it would be subject to a demo delay. But the demo delays are not being effective in terms of stopping demolition. So, we can't prohibit it, they own it. This is private property.
Okay. Well, why don't
All
we-
you can do is provide incentive.
Why don't we throw it towards a vote and see how it lays, and we'll go from there.
Right.
Well, I will move that we recommend this article.
Okay, do we get a second from anybody?
I'll go for the second.
All right, everybody that's gonna be in favor?
All right.
Aye,
I'm just gonna do it.
4.
4-3.
And it goes.
I suspect it'll be a matter of some discussion at town meeting.
I'm sure it will.
It's gonna be, it's gonna
That's
be
fine,
one of them
that's what
long
town
ones.
meeting's
I'm
for.
sure, yes, I will speak for it at town meeting, and Linda will speak for it at town
Okay.
meeting.
All right,
And we have, we'll put together slides that show the houses that have been demoed that potentially could have
you
been
get your
saved
work
with
cut out
this.
for you. All right, number 6.
I don't know if it'll go through or not this time,
Zoning bylaw for the CCCOD. We've already been through this dozens and dozens and dozens of
but
times,
do
so
we
I
need to
think,
give this any more?
I don't think we have to give it
discussion?
too much more thought, so why don't,
I move that we recommend.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No way.
Did we catch you with your hand up?
Don, I
I thought I saw it, you're not getting out of it.
It's just one more option for them.
No, it doesn't do enough. This bylaw doesn't do enough. It's obvious. And therefore, we've also split it up between restaurants and retail, which I don't understand why restaurants are permitted by right and retail is special permit. It doesn't make sense to me.
All right.
Well, it goes to the floor
Let them-
and we
let them
make our
figure it
argument, yeah.
So I don't understand the last edits that were put in it, but at this point,
All
I
right.
support it.
Moving forward. Administrative review. Number 12 Kidder Road.
Wait a minute, have you voted on everything?
Everything's done.
Did you vote on the rezoning of the frontage
Part of the last
units?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It was Article
That's a
21
separate
and
article.
Article 22, wasn't it?
That's a separate article.
Not on there.
Not on here.
Take,
Well, it's,
I had
Better
it,
be
for
on
for
there.
purposes of this agenda, we have it as number 6.
Okay.
The warrant has it listed as 2 separate articles.
All right, can we
All
put it
right.
in just like we did it?
Yeah.
All right. We're good then.
All right.
The RCI,
Kidder Road, have at it.
covered.
I guess I have a couple of questions here before we get going.
Okay.
This is coming to us as a request for endorsement of the Mylars,
Correct.
which is normally a pretty straightforward turning of the crank.
Right.
So I'm wondering, and maybe Evan could enlighten me a bit, given that there's a lot of activity on this, a lot
Sure.
of paper in the file, just exactly what is it?
Their stuff has
Yeah.
expired, so there's no
Well, I understand
Mylar to
I
get
under-
signed.
Okay, the problem is that there is a claim that there is no Mylar to sign.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
It's, so that's where we're at.
So we have to decide whether we have a Mylar.
So,
So
Yeah.
the simplest explanation is, it was originally a request to endorse Mylars.
Right.
That has evolved
Okay.
into tonight's discussion, which is whether the planning board permit lapsed
Run out, yeah.
or it has not lapsed.
Okay.
okay,
And I
Mike,
see town council has a letter here. Do you have anything you
We
want
can-
to weigh in and say about this? I read your letter, but I don't know if you want to,
Yes.
public know.
summary.
Happy to review this.
give
So-
us a little summary on it, the,
Certainly. So the first thing that I looked at in my letter is the issue with regards to whether or not the lapse provision should be 2 years or 3 years. As was noted in, I think, most of the correspondence that you've received, the underlying statute, General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 9, was revised in 2016 to change the lapse provision contained therein to a 3-year lapse period. But the provision states it allows a lapse period of no more than 3 years. So then I took a look at Chelmsford zoning bylaw, which has a specific provision that states special permits shall lapse after 2 years. And then I took a look at your decision, which, consistent with the bylaws, states that this particular special permit would lapse within 2 years. So with regards to the way Chelmsford does it and with the way that this particular application was approved, it is a 2-year period. So presuming that they don't meet any of the standards for tolling, or just simply not counting the time period, this application will have lapsed. And the next thing I point out is that if an application has lapsed, this board does not have any authority to essentially revive it and grant an extension. You do have the right to grant extensions of special permits, but those extensions need to have been requested while the special permit is still valid. So that then leads you to the question as to whether or not this particular special permit remained valid. And the applicant is arguing that they had good cause for not commencing construction on this particular special permit. There is also a line of cases that deals with what's known as equitable tolling. And in those cases, if there's litigation or regarding not only the permit itself, which is dealt with directly in both the statute and our bylaw. If there's a direct appeal of your decision, it doesn't take effect until that appeal is resolved. But the case law is clear that if there is other approvals that are necessary, that an appeal of those approvals could result in an equitable tolling of the special permit that was granted. In this instance, there weren't any appeals of any other permitting that was necessary, but what there was litigation with regards to a dispute over a property boundary. And that litigation actually impacts one of the conditions of your decision. So your decision in special condition 7 of your special permit states, prior to the commencement of further land disturbance / construction, the fence and landscaping along the property line of Hyder shall be installed. So then the question becomes, and this is really a factual question for this board to address, was the litigation that was filed challenging that boundary something that you believe would have prevented the applicant from moving forward and commencing construction on the rest of the project because they were unable to comply with Special Condition 7. So I know that counsel for the Hyders has suggested in his materials that they could have simply placed the landscaping and the fencing at the spot where there is the dispute. So at some point, there is a property boundary that would be within their property that no one's disputing. And the suggestion is, well, that's where the fencing and the landscaping should have gone so that they could then commence. Again, that's going to be up to the board as to whether or not you would have allowed the project to move forward based upon putting fencing and landscaping in a location that is different than what was shown on the plan that you approved.
Okay.
What were
So-
you saying about this?
So-
Did town council talk about that at all,
Which one? Number 5?
number 5?
Yeah, on, prior to commencement of land disturbance in section, or number 5, it says no construction, including land preparation, shall commence until all necessary permits required by state, local, and federal laws or regulations have been secured and copies are submitted to the planning board and building inspector as otherwise specified, allowed by the board. So wouldn't that say that all the permits, the building permit, the road opening permits, all that stuff should have been already in hand prior to them even sticking a shovel in the ground?
Well, I mean, that is a question, again, that is a question of interpretation of your decision.
Right.
My understanding is that there was some land disturbance associated with going to put in that landscaping and that fencing.
Right.
But that doesn't really go to the question of whether or not there was a lapse of the permit. That goes to the question of whether or not they had the authority to actually do even the small amount that they did.
Right, so they could have gone and got their permit at that time prior to doing any work, by the way this is worded, and they wouldn't be in an issue of not having a permit to continue the work with, because they would already had the permit,
What permit are you referring to?
the building permit.
You don't need a building permit for landscaping and fencing.
No, but it states in here that you need to get all permits prior to any
Land prep.
land prep.
Correct.
But I would presume, I would interpret that requirement to not include a building permit. That would mean that you would need Conservation Commission approval if you're within a wetland boundary, if there were Board of Health requirements that you had to satisfy, stormwater requirements. I would not interpret that as requiring them to get a building permit, because your decision wouldn't allow them to move forward and obtain that building permit until they had actually completed the work that was required in Special Condition 7.
It's separate here. What are you referring to? And then this, the next one.
Yeah, so this is talking about a NIPIDs permit, erosion and sedimentation control plan has to be submitted.
Was all that stuff submitted?
I don't believe so, but you wouldn't necessarily need NIPDs if unless you were disturbing more than an acre.
Right.
So I mean, this didn't get to my office, to my desk. If it had, and they wanted to install that fence or landscaping, that likely would have been allowed to proceed.
Right.
The NIPD's permit, you need if you're disturbing more than an acre. I don't know, I don't think they were disturbing more than an acre for
Right.
landscaping and fencing. But this never got to my desk. I don't recall there ever being any discussion about, like I said, it didn't require a building permit. They hadn't done their the Mylars weren't endorsed yet.
Right. That's kind of almost unheard of to wait for 3 years to get your Mylars endorsed, number one. That's, and I said that to Colleen when I first saw it. I said, well, this is a little bit unusual, to say the least.
No, nothing here. Yeah,
My thought on it, and I'll just throw out what my thought is on it, I don't believe we should be signing the Mylar. That's my thought on it. I think they should be coming back to bring it back and ask for everything all over again, is my thought.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you should be looking at the issue of whether or not the Mylar should be signed right now. I think that the threshold.
That's what we're here
determination
for.
The board needs to make is whether or not the permit has lapsed.
But that's what we're here for, is to sign the Mylars.
I think that has become a secondary question.
But that's what's on, that's what's on the agenda.
Until this board, this is an administrative item.
Right.
It's not a duly noticed public hearing, so I'm not too concerned about the scope questions. But this board needs to make the determination whether or not the permit remains valid, in which case, once you've made that determination, you can talk about whether or not the Mylar is ready to be endorsed or not.
Okay.
But you can't endorse the Mylar if the permit has lapsed.
Right. I think it's lapsed, that's my thought.
Typically, wouldn't an applicant come to the board and say, I need extension?
Correct.
Why?
Well, I think we should let the applicant get up and make his speech
Yeah, I
and
think we
take and
should,
listen to him.
Listen
and
to
I
what he
think-
has to say.
And go from there.
Yeah, let me throw out a couple of thoughts about what I'm interested in hearing about. I'm interested in hearing about precisely what the action was that was brought that may or may not toll the time period, the duration of the permit. And well, that's kind of, to me, it's looking like the key question. Who launched it, and was it specifically to change the boundary, or was it for other things?
I do think the who launched it is an important question.
Yes.
Some of the case law that I had looked at, there was a case where there was a boundary dispute
Yeah,
that was brought by the permit holder.
right.
And in that particular
I wouldn't
instance-
toll it
In that
if I were
particular
a
instance, the
judge.
court said, we are
Yeah.
not going to toll it. You brought
Yeah.
this was not an impediment that was brought upon you, this was an
Yeah.
impediment you brought upon yourself.
Yes, that's where I'm thinking.
So that
Right.
is an important consideration. I believe that it was the neighbor that initially brought
Mm-hmm.
the litigation with regards to the boundary dispute. I think that there is a cross claim.
Oh, of course.
With regards to other issues. So that, but you're correct, that is
Okay.
an issue. But the main issue that you need to make a determination on is whether or not the litigation that is being relied upon by the
Yeah.
applicant is something that
Sufficient.
is acted as an impediment to the moving forward and actually commencing the construction
Right.
within the 2 years. I will also note that I pointed out in my letter, but I didn't note here, there is also a claim that the litigation has prevented the applicant from being able to obtain financing. And I will say that I did not find any case law addressing the issue of whether or not that is something that would support equitable tolling, or that would constitute good cause. I found one case that addressed it sort of as a side note. In that case, they actually pointed out that the municipality involved actually had a provision in their zoning bylaw that said inability to get financing will constitute good cause for not commencing construction. That's obviously unique to that particular municipality. It is not something that can be extrapolated statewide. I wasn't able to find any decision, based upon state statute that said yes or no with regards to financing.
Okay.
Wouldn't you still go for an extension if that's the case, though, even if you know?
Obviously, applying for the extension within the stated lapse period is the safest course of action. But there is plenty of case law in which extensions have been requested outside of the stated lapse period. Where courts have determined that equitable tolling does apply, and therefore the permit had not lapsed, and technically they had requested an extension during the permit period, even though it was after what was on its face.
Okay, so why don't we listen to what he has to say, and,
May I have a point of order?
sure?
I wanted to answer the question, Mr. Raisbeck, before we get involved in much deeper conversation,
Okay,
which is the nature of the lawsuit that was brought by
Yeah.
Hires was for nuisance,
Yep,
trespass,
yep.
cutting down wrongfully of trees,
Mhm.
and a boundary dispute.
And the fourth one was the boundary dispute. Okay,
Those are the
thank you.
claims.
Okay.
Counterclaims back are for
Yeah,
alleged rent,
for everything.
but I don't
Yeah.
think that's what you're looking for.
Right.
That was what
That answered my question very well, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is John Bikini. I am Loop Real Estate, 12 Kidder Road. Approximately a couple of years ago, we were before this board. for the construction of approximately 25,000 square foot building, multi-tenanted. It was approved by the board. There were nobody contesting anything after the approval of the board. I'm here to correct an error that was made by information that was given to me, that my permit was for 3 years, not for 2 years. And I was here in August a year ago at the planning board to secure any necessary paperwork that I needed. And I was told, you don't have to, you have another year to go. I said, I'll see you in 12 months. I came back 12 months, and here we are, standing in front of this. I would have done it a year ago. There was no reason that I would not have done it a year ago. I made the effort to come. I was told that the rule was changed 3 years. I said, great, I'll see you in 12 months. Meantime, suit had been filed against me. I was hoping to get it resolved before the end of the 3-year period. That has not happened as of yet. And here we are.
So just for the, for the board's record, that incorrect information was supplied by me a year ago. And then when the applicant had come in a month ago for the request for Mylars, there was some question about that, and that's when I forwarded it to council, and council provided the correct information. At that point, I asked the applicant to have their attorney to submit their position statement, and then that was followed up by the Hyder's attorney submitting their position statement, which leads us to this evening.
Evan, do we have anything documented as to request a year ago?
So I don't believe there was any formal request. There wouldn't need to have been a formal request. A year ago, when the applicant came in, as he indicated, I believe he was preparing to commence with the endorsement of Mylars and building permit. I incorrectly assumed that the State Zoning Act amendment applied to local permits. Fortunately for all involved, that didn't commence a year ago. And then here we are a year later. So the applicant has been informed of the correct application of the planning board's decision. And then there was this notion as to whether it lapsed or whether it's still valid.
Okay. Well,
What's the consequences if we vote on it if they're still under litigation?
Well, the litigation is going to continue.
Right.
Either party would have the right to appeal whatever decision the board makes pursuant to Chapter 48-17. So it would be a 20-day appeal period after this board issues its decision.
So would it be cleaner for the board just say, we made a mistake, but you gotta start over your permanent process? Since it was a 2 year?
I wouldn't take that approach. I think that the board, has been presented with a request for an extension. There has been a claim that they benefit from equitable tolling or for good cause for not having moved forward. This board needs to make a determination as to whether or not that is an accurate claim. That there was an impediment that prevented them from actually moving forward in their construction. And it doesn't matter what, the board considers to be the cleaner approach. There's going to be a decision. That decision is going to be subject to appeal, so you should be making the decision that you believe is the legally and factually correct decision, whatever that may be.
okay, we get Attorney Hausler up there like to talk, so are you all set for the time being, or?
At the moment,
Okay.
You definitely have the right to come back up.
Come back up, please. I'd just like to hear both sides to see what's going on, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Douglas Hausler representing the Hiders who are here. You have my materials that I submitted today with the exhibits. I'll keep it brief, notwithstanding the length of the letter. Number one is, there is nothing that prohibited the applicant from asking for building permits or otherwise complying with the terms of the decision. One of their arguments was that it were prevented from doing so because of the litigation. And I've attached, I believe it is Exhibit C in your package. And I want to be very clear about that. It's an email from the applicant's attorney with me that said, quote, "Loop will proceed unaffected by this agreement with the building construction and other yard work not along the boundary walls," i.e., they can go forward and do anything they want as long as they don't do it along that particular boundary. And we had a stipulation to that effect. I wasn't holding them up, nor the Hiders, from going forward with their program. And that's by stipulation. That's an email from their counsel. So all of this ballyhoo about coming to see Evan and getting advice and all that, the litigation had been pending since July of 17. They had years to go forward. They didn't. They could have applied for a permit. They could have asked for the Mylars. The applicant did nothing. What it did do was how to antagonize the Hiders. And what it did is, and I want you to think about this fence issue, because it has to be just graphic. Imagine you have 4+ acres of land, and my pictures show it, and let's just say that there's a rock, and there's an argument that the dividing line is right in the middle. All you have to do is go like this and put the fence on your property. And guess what? You have no problem. What did the applicant do? Split the eyeball of a gnat and went, and I have pictures of the applicant himself measuring with a line, trying to get to that last little gnat's eyelid. That's not good faith. You hear the phrase equitable tolling? Equitable. Fairness. There's nothing fair about this applicant. So what they've done is tried to intimidate. They've tried every possible thing to force my clients to capitulate, including, as I've said, a $319,000 counterclaim about land that was supposedly disturbed, and we have pictures of the trees that are up there. They ripped out our trees. We didn't rip out theirs. Theirs is green along their boundary line. I showed you the pictures of what the property looked like before any of their land activity, and I've showed you a picture of what it looks like today. And the spirit of your decision was be fair to the abutter. That was the whole reason for the fence. That was the whole reason for all these conditions. No work to be commenced until the fence was done, until the Hiders were protected. They went to a lot of meetings for that. And all they had to do, the applicant, all it had to do was say, move the fence over here, we build it, we leave this to be, this is going to get settled by litigation or by stipulation, one or the other. That's not what they did. And instead, they're pounding away. I ask you to use your equitable judgment. Tell them to go reapply. Guess what's going to happen to the litigation? I bet it's going to have to settle, because you could be damn sure that I'm going to be back here when they reapply, and you're going to have more conditions in that next decision than you could possibly imagine. So one way or another, we're going to get resolution, and I'm asking the board to do it equitably, fairly, under the law that we presented, consistent with your town council's argument. Equitable tolling within your discretion. And their own submission proved it.
Throw it at me.
You know, this is the
agree with
bikini
that.
coat of arms. The other guy did it. First it's the Hiders, then it's Evan, then it's the board misconstruing what has to be done. That's the responsible person right there. No one stopped that person from saying, build the line here, build the fence.
I agree with that.
It's that common, it's that simple. So don't listen to all this nonsense and vote your conscience. Thank you.
You want
I have a bunch of, I have a query
You
that
wanna-
I'd like to
You want to
present
throw a
here.
rebuttal to that? And we're not going to get into a big legal case here, obviously, because it's not our place. So you can go ahead and say what you got to fair shot back, I guess you could put it.
It was good theater. I'm not here trying to take advantage of anybody. I'm the easiest guy in the world to get along with. I had an engineering company. They put pins in, put a string on it, do this, this is where the fence goes. Everything stopped at that point. What am I to do? They had the opportunity during the whole planning process. None of this was an issue until we started to prepare to do what we needed to do. We can't even do that.
Well, I think if I remember back, the fence was an issue the entire time.
And we agreed to the fence. Wasn't a problem. I was going to put a different type of fence. People wanted that fence. I gave you the fence.
Right.
That
Right.
was it.
All right, I got a couple of thoughts here. It seems that with all the bits and pieces of litigation, the one thing that is truly germane is the piece having to do with where the boundary is. And in particular, how big is this dispute? Is it a matter of an inch, a foot, 30 feet?
It's significant. It's
How big? Well, how big?
approximately 3-4 feet.
3 or 4, okay, it's 3 or 4 feet. And the reason I
We don't
bring-
know yet.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Well,
It's at least that.
yeah, it's disputed, but I'm trying to find out what the boundaries are of this dispute.
What have the engineers had to say about this?
The engineers took all of their measurements off the highway bounds and ran them down, I don't know how many exits. They brought it all back, they tied everything in. And the problem was that my deed does not say a boundary wall. I think the Hyders does say a boundary wall. However, the boundary wall was moved. It isn't in its original position. And therein lies one of the biggest problems that we're trying to untangle.
So just to refresh the
What
board's.
did your engineer say?
A, there is a boundary dispute,
Yeah,
professional engineer. Two, you have pictures
Yeah.
of them moving the boundaries.
that's,
That's the heavy equipment that, now he's complaining that the rocks were moving. Guess who moved them?
well, whatever the case, let me tell you why I'm asking about the degree of the dispute. Because if we're going to talk about something that looks like tolling, there's got to be a fairly substantial reason, not a frivolous reason, for this guy being prevented from building what he wanted to build. And I'm trying to determine whether, again, is it a foot, is it 40 feet? If it's 40 feet, you've got one set of consequences to trying to start construction. If it's 1 foot or 2 foot, you've got a much smaller one.
It impacts the plans.
So just to provide some refreshing, if you recall during your public hearing,
Yes, I remember.
the Hyders did express
did.
concern with that rear property line.
did.
It was
Right.
contested during the hearing. The board's position, which is normally your position, is if the applicant presents a plan prepared and stamped by a licensed surveyor in Massachusetts, the board typically doesn't use its public hearing to resolve property line disputes.
Right.
Right.
So you relied on
On the engineers.
knowing that it could still be disputed privately.
Right, and if it was just a foot,
So-
plus and minus falls into
So the
play,
reason
and
that
it
that's
wouldn't have been an
important
issue.
is that
But it's multiple
the
feet.
board's plan is specific, and then, as the applicant is indicating, from that property line, the plan shows 3 or 4 feet before the detention basin, and within that 3 or 4 feet was an existing retaining wall,
Yeah.
fencing, and landscaping. And so, as you guys know, because this decision was very specific about this fence along the property line, if and when I were to go out and inspect on behalf of the board, I would pay particular attention to the location of that fence. So that's where, that's where all of this kind of, you can roll it out and see
Um,
sequentially how this would play out.
Well, Okay, the claim seems to be that because of this dispute, it was not really feasible or practical in any real sense. There was a big impediment.
It has to be a legal
It
impediment.
has to be well, legal impediment I can't state because I don't have the robe. But I can see where the argument lies. And if the impediment, if the distance that we're talking about is relatively small, then I don't see how the size of that impediment can rise to the level of something that's going to toll the 2 years or the 3 years or whatever we decide. I guess 2 years at this point. On the other hand, if in fact you say that really makes a large practical difference in the way this project would roll out, then you get the opposite answer. And I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about
We got
the
plans for
equitable
this
piece of
project
this.
in the box?
That's a fair way to
We brought
approach it.
them up.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm asking about how big is the distance, and,
About what you just mentioned.
yeah, about like that.
So that's,
Can I have a point
Okay.
of clarification since I'm new? Is how can we approve a plan if we don't know the boundaries in the person's lot that we're approving? I mean, I could say I have 2 acres.
we
I
go
really
by
have-
the good faith of the
I know that, but
engineers
now we
saying
know
that
it's- we-
that's
we
what it
know
is. So
there's an
now
issue.
there's a debate.
Right, so how can we
I think the
approve-
easiest way to fix this is
We don't have a stamp plan.
go back through the process again, get it done right,
Yeah.
and
But-
bring it.
That is an approach
Yeah.
that can be taken after you've
After.
made your determination as to whether or not
Okay.
there's been a lapse.
Yeah.
Before you can do anything else, you need to determine whether or not there's been a lapse.
There has been a
And
lapse.
if
There
I
has
can
been a
just
lapse.
answer Hank's question, the board has to rely upon the verification of the surveyor when they stamp the plan.
But now we know they're wrong, or they could be wrong.
Well, but you've already made your decision. And the planning board is not a board that has any jurisdiction to
I think
determine
Nan was.
land
I
use
think Henry
disputes.
was.
Right? If one party says that the property line is here and another party says the property line is there,
Was he okay?
But isn't this a
You don't-
unique
you-
situation? I
and
mean,
well, the planning board has an affirmative obligation to act on
Because you're
applications that have
making
been
a
submitted to
determination
them.
of fact.
So you really don't have any choice other than to rely upon information that has been
Well, we
provided
can
by the
always
applicant
say that we
through
want to
the issuance of
delay
the
and
stamped
review it,
plan.
but I'm not-
But with all due respect, council's forgetting one thing about that decision that you made, which was, in your decision, it's not in the findings, but it's in the decision and in the minutes. It says the wall, the boundary wall won't be touched.
Yeah.
I have
But that
pictures
doesn't
showing
limit
that's
who
exactly
votes.
what they did, because the boundary was in dispute, and you were aware of it. And they still went ahead, and they played with the boundary wall. So, you know, with all due respect, folks, let's not make this a big deal here. They didn't comply. It's that simple. Let's not get too.
Paul, what
technical.
do we need to do to prove either it is expired or it isn't expired? What is the parameters that we can work
The
with?
first point I wanted to make was, my previous statement wasn't really discussing this particular project, it was generally. That this board has to act upon applications that are submitted to it, therefore you have to rely upon stamps, stamped plans submitted by licensed surveyors.
Yeah.
So that was a general comment. In regards to your comment, Mr. Chairman, I think ultimately what you as a board need to determine is if the applicant had come in and said, I want to build the fence where the dispute lies, right? So if it's 4 feet and I want to build it into my property 4 feet, would he have been
Yeah.
able to get permission to do that without having to open up another public hearing, without having to modify the plans? Is that something that was de minimis enough
Yeah.
that they would have been able to simply move forward? In which case, maybe that really was not an impediment to them pursuing their project. If it's something that would have been held to a strict compliance standard, then that probably is a legal impediment that would have prohibited them from moving.
And they wanted to put the fence, correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted to put the fence exactly, perfectly on the property line.
Where it was shown on the
Half a
plan.
foot behind the line, just for maintenance, what have you.
So,
Isn't there a provision in the building codes that says you need to be a certain distance off a property line for maintenance on a fence?
No.
There isn't.
So that would be common sense.
It's common. So the way
sense.
that I would have interpreted that, to answer Council's question, is because I knew this issue was specific, the board had a specific condition about it. If that fence was located anywhere other than the exact location on the plan, I would have asked them to come back to the board for a minor modification.
We do minor modifications all the time.
And I
too.
assume that the board would have accepted it as a minor modification, but I don't know, because of the uniqueness and the specifics associated with this decision. But I wasn't gonna provide any flexibility.
Right. I wish we had a set of his plans here from what we approved, and I asked for them like a month ago, so we could look at them and look at the Mylars to make sure everything was the same. And the reason I wanted to do that, because of a dispute like this, in front of that fence, you have a retention pond.
Yes.
So whether the fence got moved to the 4-foot mark or right on the property line wouldn't make a bit of difference for anything.
I think that's a different fence, isn't it?
No, I'm just saying, you still own the land behind it, whether the fence is there or not there, and the whole fight is over this much. This much.
Yeah.
We're not sure if it's that much.
Can I get,
This much.
Not even.
could I get some
But if you know,
clarification?
if we're not sure that it's not that much, then
Bring it back.
I think you bring it back and have the engineers redo it, have your engineers out there redo it. The engineers gotta get together and make it right. It's not our job to re-engineer a project.
That issue is outside the
Yeah.
scope of this
We're
board's
doing it
Not what
jurisdiction.
we're doing.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't be looking at who.
We have to look at whether that permit is legitimate or not. That's what the only thing we're supposed to
We're
be
looking
looking
at,
at right
at
now.
whether the permit has
Nope.
lapsed.
That's no,
Lapsed.
we're,
That's-
we're,
All right.
I think
right.
much more specifically, we are looking at whether the differences and divergences here are large enough that from a reasonable and practical point of view, it impeded the work on the other property and made it reasonable to stall everything until the litigation gets resolved, or whether it was so small or de minimis that it really wasn't an issue. Obviously, it's an issue to be litigated, but, you know, if the fence had been off 2 feet, would anybody care? Now, I have an opinion on that, but I don't want to quite
Well, we
express it
can't get
just
into that
yet.
because we're being told that's
No,
not our
that's
jurisdiction.
exactly the opinion we're supposed to have.
So with that being said,
Yeah.
why don't we walk around the table and we're just gonna figure out what everybody thinks about, the question is, do you think the permit lapsed? Nan,
I have a question
I'm
first,
gonna
please.
answer the question that I just asked
Not the
first.
right question.
Question with what?
There's something I need to know first.
All right.
The fence and the property line in question, is this the property line along the Hyder's driveway, or is this the property line in the back of the Hyder's property?
Back of the
The
house.
back of the house.
Put that.
So this is the property line. So the usage, the proposed usage, the planned usage in this plan for that property is basically for a settling basin, right? Behind. So the space between the fence and the active use has a settling basin in it?
Water retention.
A water retention basin? Okay.
So with the question on hand,
Yeah.
do you think that the permit has lapsed or it hasn't lapsed?
I believe it's lapsed.
Mike?
Yes.
Mike?
I believe it's lapsed, but let me specify why I think it lapsed, because I think our decision ought to reflect this. The reason I think it's lapsed is because I think that the differences involved in the location of this fence and the property line are small enough that they would not have stopped most reasonable projects from proceeding, if indeed that were the reason.
They don't have clear title.
Yeah.
That's not.
Then move
that's
it
not
back
our
2 feet.
problem.
It's not something that, and it would have been blocked here and would have served as a practical impediment, or I think an equitable impediment.
Yeah.
Now, it's the best I can do
Okay.
without case
Henry,
books in front of
what's
me.
your thought?
My thought is, I really wish that the applicant.
Just to the question, not the. We're
It's
going around.
lapsed.
It's lapsed.
It's
Tim?
lapsed.
Yes, lapse.
Don? Lapsed? I'm saying it's lapsed. That's the question we need to answer, correct?
That is the question. you
Can we
need
get
to
a
answer.
motion to carry through with this?
Well, let's
Before you do that,
hear
Mr.
from.
Chairman, I think what you, after listening to the input from Evan with regards to how he would have implemented this if it had come to
Yeah.
him, and the fact that he would have required the applicant to come to the board to seek a minor modification. I think really, the factual question you need to answer is whether or not, given the size of this disputed area, whether or not you think that this would have been a minor modification that would not have required a new hearing, that would not have opened up new avenues of appeal.
Respectfully,
But
I'm going to object. With all due respect, counsel, the board makes that decision. You're reframing the issue. They've identified what the question is, and you, quite frankly, Paul, you're spinning it. And I'm asking you not to. They
I'm
they
going
asked
to
a simple question, and 7 people unanimously have said something. And now you are questioning that judgment.
No, I
I
don't think that's
disagree
what he's
with that.
doing at all.
I'm trying to actually narrow the focus of the question that they are answering, because that's where their decision
Well,
is going to
this
lie.
all came about because of not getting the Mylars signed, right? This is what this is all about.
This all came about because there
Because-
wasn't construction commenced
and-
within
yeah.
the 2-year period.
And any projects that I've ever done, when you get it approved, a week or 2 weeks later, you hand your lawyer the Mylar, and they get down to the district court with the signed Mylar, and it's done.
But in
Why?
this instance, if that had happened,
But why
they
wait?
still would not have commenced their construction, so it would still be facing the
Regardless,
same issue.
regardless. That's what the applicant was coming here for, to get a Mylar signed. That's where this whole thing came to head. Why was it that you waited almost 3 years to get the Mylar signed?
We're in litigation.
You weren't a week
The
after,
case, though.
2 weeks after, you were not in litigation. Everything you just said yourself, everything was fine
Until litigation.
until, how long after the decision was litigation?
Truthfully, I don't remember.
Yeah. Honestly, can I
Over a
can I
year.
comment on that?
There are other things that
Yeah.
I have to do that.
There's
Require-
other things that everybody has to
Sure,
do.
absolutely.
And I'm as busy as you are, and I get my stuff done. So,
My thought on the litigation is, and this is why I'm concentrating on how wide that space is, I don't see the litigation as being a major and practical impediment
Right.
to going
It
forward
wasn't
with
a
the project.
detriment to this project.
So I don't see any kind of
And that's
equitable
what I was trying
tolling.
to narrow the board's
Yeah,
focus
Yeah.
to.
and that's
So-
what I think we ought to be on.
Before we beat this dog to death, we've made
Yeah.
basically our decision about whether or not it has lapsed.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get a motion.
So
And I'd
moved.
like to get a second,
I move.
and I'd like
that we
to get a vote.
I move that we determine that this permit has lapsed because it was not acted upon in time and it was not blocked or delayed in a substantial way.
Thank you. We got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. See how easy that was?
Thank you.
Can you defend that one, Paul?
I think I'm gonna have to.
I think you're going to have to.
I think this one, I got a feeling this one may get litigated
Either way, it was gonna get litigated.
But let's at least understand our reasoning.
I wanted to make sure you guys were all on
Yep.
the
Yeah.
same page as to
You want to take a couple-minute break, or?
Sure. Why don't we take a 5-minute break after that?
Oh, I gotta stretch my Oh, okay, I got the last 3 little glitches in my tractor.
Nice.
You never seen anything drive so smooth.
All right, we're ready. New public hearing, 56 Pile Drive. Mr. Duchesne.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Yes, thank you, please. That was quite an exciting night. I'm glad it wasn't me. In any event, good evening. I'm here this evening representing Hub Foundation, Inc., which is with respect to their property at 56 Pile Drive. With me this evening, Matt Stengel from Land Tech Consultants, Inc., our engineering firm. Also, Maya Minkin is a representative from Hub Foundation, and Alyssa Maxwell is here as well, and she's one of the property owners. So we've got the whole team here to answer your questions. As was mentioned, we're here seeking a special permit for an outdoor contractor's yard at 56 Pile Drive, AKA Rivard Lane. The board may have recalled a couple years ago, we did a subdivision to create this lot, and at the time, the road was Rivard Lane. It's now being referred to as Pile Drive. Access to our site, and if I could refer to my plans, thank you. Access to the site is off of Progress Ave here. Here is the proposed Pile Drive, Rivard Lane. It was approved as subdivision, and here is our lot here. And we are proposing to utilize this lot as a contractor's yard. Hub Foundation, as you may or may not know, is a family-owned business that's actually been operating here in Chelmsford for over 50 years. So they are one of your older, long-standing companies, and family-owned to boot. So I don't know how many of those you have, but they're certainly up there in terms of longevity in town. So we're here for a special permit, but I do want to sort of preface my presentation on the permit with some information. As part of this filing, we've been working with the town engineer, with Evan and staff, Conservation Commission, who we're meeting with next week. And so we've been doing a lot of work up beforehand. In doing so, we've actually been given notification, and you'll see it reflected in Evan's letter, and I think the town engineer's letter, that we did have a couple of deficiencies in our filing. First of all, because we are actually proposing a slightly different design for Pile Drive, we are going to need to come in for a minor modification of your subdivision approval, because your subdivision approval defined the construction of the road. We've slightly modified it. We need to come back in for a minor modification of that. So we are working, and we'll do that. As Evan pointed out to us too, we should have requested an aquifer protection special permit. It turns out part of this isn't, we're in the aquifer protection. And then there was a question about a possible landscaping special permit, and I'm reviewing that. So we are well aware of the fact that we need to provide that additional information to you, and we need to address the engineering comments and Evan's comments in their letters, and as you know, we will do that, and we're working on it. However, I wanted to come here tonight to give you a presentation on the site plan, the special permit plan, so that we could get some feedback from you on the plan. And then that'll give us the opportunity to take your feedback, the feedback from Conservation, the recommendations of Evan and Christina, and button this whole thing up and come back to you. So I'm certainly not looking for any kind of decision tonight, not that you would, given the deficiencies, but really we're here just to give you a quick overview of the site, which I'm going to get on right away, and get some feedback from you so that we can then go back and do a good job of buttoning this up and coming back and look for a decision. So let me jump right to the site. Our site is 2.15 acres in size. As I said, access is over Pile Drive, AKA Rivard Lane, which comes off of the end of Progress Ave. Excuse me. The original Rivard Lane, as approved, was a 20-foot pavement with 2-foot shoulders on each side, so it was basically a 24-foot roadway. It had an open drainage system. It was very close to the wetlands. We did receive an order of conditions, but it was close to the wetlands. Our new roadway that we're proposing is wider in pavement. It's 28 feet in pavement. Hub Foundation has some bigger equipment, need to get in there. We went wider. But we've redesigned the drainage to be a closed drainage system where we control all the stormwater. It's collected in catch basins, infiltrated through underground system. In my opinion, a better system. And I know the Conservation Commission should be at least a little happy. We've been able to pull the work away from the wetlands. So even though we got a wider road, with the new drainage design and everything, we were able to pull back from the wetlands. And as I said, we're meeting with Conservation next week to present that to them. As part of the proposal, we are proposing a 4,800 square foot building as shown on the site plan. That building will have a small office in it. The remainder of the building will be used as storage and maintenance bays for equipment. So part of the Hub Foundation business, they have various pieces of equipment, and I'm not talking trucks or vehicles, but they have drill rigs, and they run the remote control, their track machines, they're smaller machines, they have drill bits, they have all sorts of mechanical equipment associated with their business. They're hoping to store that in here and clean it, take care of it in here. We are not proposing to do any kind of vehicular maintenance or repairs in this building. It's really an equipment storage and maintenance facility. In terms of parking and in terms of vehicles, as you can see in the gray color, that is the proposed pavement areas. So we're proposing to pave that area around the building and of course the road and coming in. Now, just come over and give it a push. So this is proposed to be paved area. We've got our 5 parking spots, 4 regular parking spots and a handicap spot associated with the building here against the building. And in addition to that, this paved area, we don't plan on storing stuff here. I mean, there'll occasionally be a vehicle here. Obviously, it provides our turnaround for fire and police and whatnot, but we're not proposing any kind of fleet storage. At most, you might see between 5 and 8, let's call them vehicle-type machines here, a drilling rig or something like that. But no fleet storage of trucks or automobiles other than our parking associated with here. The remainder of the site, which is out here, we're proposing to be a gravel, natural material base for material storage. No vehicle storage out here, but rather materials. Hub has a tremendous amount of metal casing, right? They're different lengths, but they're not, casing. That's what that area is going to be used for, storage of their sort of materials, if you will, which is mostly metal casings. So that gravel area is proposed for storage of the metal casings. Again, no vehicle storage proposed there, and no vehicle fleet storage proposed anywhere on the site. As you may know, Hub operates a facility across the street from Revard. Very busy site, a lot of stuff, very busy company. As you can imagine, the ability to purchase this property across the street, it provided them an opportunity to expand their business right next door. So this is a great opportunity for them. Lighting, that is one of the things that I think Evan may have recommended we need to provide, and we are working on it. But I will give you a little preview. We are proposing some wall-mounted lights on the building, sort of standard wall-mounted shielded lights. And then we're going to propose a couple of outdoor lights in this location, potentially one here. One here, there's a gate here that'll be controlled to be able to shut off access to the site. The fire will have passage, but there's a gate here, so we want to put a light here. We're proposing to install those lights on the fence, and I'll get to the fence, but there's 10-foot fence poles, so we're proposing to put the lights at the 10-foot, on the top of the 10-foot fence poles, so they won't be very high. They'll be shielded, directional lights that will shine only onto our site. And I will provide you a lighting plan well before we meet next. With regard to fencing, we are proposing a 10-foot chain link fence around the entire perimeter of the site. And we have also proposed that we will install privacy, either slats or the material to make it a privacy fence on that fence along the areas that abut our neighbors. So along here, not proposing the privacy slats here because it's a long wooded area and a wetland behind us. Same here, it's all wooded. But any areas where a neighboring, there's only parking lots really around us, the parking lots. But anywhere that the parking lot can see directly in, we'll put the privacy. But we will have a chain link fence around the entire site to keep us contained. That's my general overview. I do have Mr. Stangl here. If you'd like more details on the drainage design and how, but I will say they've already had a couple of iterations of back and forth with town engineer, and we've got a final set of recommendations that we're integrating into the plans. But if you do want more information on the drainage, Matt's happy to explain how things flow. I did make a promise to Attorney Hausler. Attorney Hausler represents our neighbors here. Sorry.
Hardy door.
Hardy door.
Hardy. He had called me today to tell me that his clients do not oppose what we're doing, but they want to make sure that our drainage design is such that we're not going to put drainage onto his client's property. I explained to him that, in fact, in doing our drainage design, it turns out some of the water from their site is coming onto our site. So we took that into account and we included it into our drainage design. So we've agreed to meet with he and his clients and sit down and discuss the drainage. But he wanted me to make sure I told you that so that he didn't have to stay. He had a long night, but I can assure you, we're going to meet with our neighbors and show them that we're protecting them in terms of drainage. So again, we really appreciate your time and any comments you might have on this that we can then take back and integrate into, as I said, our final, cleanup, redesign, submission of the modification application. And that way we hopefully can address everything. So when we see you next, there won't be many questions.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we run right around the board real quick and go for comments and see what everybody has to say about this.
Yeah, a question for the applicant. Is there any intention to use the BAOD or the CEIOD for this application?
No, I didn't think we had to. It was straight. The zoning in the site allows for outdoor contract yard by virtue of special permit. So we didn't have to get too tricky.
Okay. Mike?
You mentioned there are existing businesses across the street. Where is it located on this map? I'm just familiar.
If-
Progress it's directly across above.
Oh, up at the top?
If you drive out Pile,
What about, yeah.
if you drive out Pile Drive,
Yep.
and you cross over Progress, driveway's right here.
Oh, okay.
It's literally a straight shot.
Right. That all you got, Mike?
No, I didn't
Okay.
have any
Mike?
direct questions.
I don't see any particular problems with it. It's an area that's well adapted for this
Okay.
kind of construction.
Right. Henry?
No issues.
Tim?
No issues. Great
Don?
to see them staying in town.
Hank?
No, I think it's a great location. I just go on pushing. You have the lot across the street. Are you gonna still maintain the equipment over there,
Yes.
welding and stuff?
Yes. Our welding shop will stay over there.
Right.
We can use that bay for looking at stuff, added weather where you can see what
Yeah.
any issues are and then send it
No,
over.
I think you kinda need this lot.
Yeah, we do.
No, I think it's good.
Thanks.
I just had one quick item.
Yep.
Which I did include in my memo. Within the gravel material storage area, they're gonna be racks, like metal racks for storing material, or is everything gonna be on the ground? So the reason I ask is that, the height, those may be considered structures under the zoning bylaw, depending on how they're affixed to the ground. And if they are considered structures, obviously complying with setbacks and even height, I'm not sure what the height of these are. So. just give
Why
that-
don't we'll give you an example.
Yeah, just give that some thought.
And come in and building inspector can tell us whether they constitute. They're not tall, right? They're
No,
pallets.
most of the stuff we want to keep on pallets because we put them onto the trucks to bring them
Sure.
onto the jobs. so
Right,
it's-
but they're not
Yeah,
tall.
they're usually like 8-10 feet tall.
Oh, no.
pallet rack.
Even at
Oh.
like
Okay.
dunnage, they proceed on it.
All right,
Yeah.
They're too heavy to step.
excellent.
Mike, got another
Yeah,
question?
one quick one. What is the area, the paved area over there? I'm wondering, yeah, that area, the gray area.
Obviously, right now,
What is that area?
this is the
total?
paved area. Oh, the
Yeah,
square
like
footage.
square footage.
Can you give me a rough?
I'm just roughly, I'm not.
Well, we're 2.1.
So it's probably an
Okay, so it's about 1 acre
More than an
paved.
acre, maybe,
Okay.
especially if you count the road.
Okay, 1 acre
If you
of
look
pavement
at
plus
this,
building, yeah.
It's probably slightly less than an acre if you're
Okay.
just looking
Yeah.
at that. But when you include the drive,
Yeah.
I guess a little over.
Okay, and the reason I poke at that is, if in fact you're not gonna have all that many vehicles on the paved area, do you really need all that pavement? I mean, obviously, you've got things that are gonna be hard to turn around, so you can't be making it fancy, but, do you truly need all of the,
We can look at
all of the
that.
pavement?
Yeah.
If you,
It
because
needs
if
to
you
be
don't, it'll
impervious.
save yourself some money.
I know one of the things was to make sure that we had adequate turnaround.
Right, and for the
fire
kind of
police
trucks that
and
are
stuff
gonna
like
do that, you're gonna need it.
Yeah, but we certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, I just.
You're right, saves
think
money.
that's-
Saves money,
Yep.
right? The paved parking lot, is there a berm going around that, or is it granite curbing, or?
Matt, how do we control the runoff on the pavement?
Yeah, there is a berm that I believe, I think, this is just there's no berm on the south side of the property, but I believe we have a berm that goes along this side, and then the water flows down from the
Okay.
property over here,
Yep.
so there's no berm on
So
this
everything,
side.
everything obviously is pitching towards the catch basins, and
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
so everything's running off anyhow, so you're fine with that.
Nothing's running off, though.
Yeah,
We're
right,
controlling it all.
you've got everything going into the, okay. For the gravel part of it, what do you plan for runoff on that? Are you putting a swale around the outside of it to keep anything from running off the gravel part? Because you're not gonna have catch basins on the gravel part.
No, so here, this dashed line here is ridge line. Everything on this side of that ridge line goes to a swale that runs along this property line here, which goes to we have an infiltration basin with the sediment forebay.
Okay, yep.
And then any runoff that travels this direction goes to the catch basins, and there's an isolator row in
Yep.
the infiltration, the underground infiltration system.
Yep.
So that will
Catches all the silt.
Yes, yeah, so we have, it'll remove all the solids.
Okay. All right, that's all I got. I don't know, I think it's a great location for what's there. This company's been around, like you said, forever. You never hear of any problems with them. They're a good organization, so I'm in favor of it.
I'm in favor.
So I am going to ask that you give us more than 2 weeks. Like, we'd like
Okay.
to come back in a month, because,
Yep.
as I mentioned, we have a little work to do, and we want to make sure we can get it done in time and complete. So I don't want to try and rush it and try and get back in a couple weeks. So if you would consider.
Would October 9th work? The second meeting in October is the same week of town meeting, so I don't know if the planning board.
No, October 9th is great. What I didn't want to do was, like 2 weeks from today.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to get a motion together to continue to, what was it, October 9th?
No, this is a public hearing, right?
Yes.
This is a
Which
public
means,
hearing.
Is there anybody from the public? You probably ought
I
to
don't
call.
see anybody. Yep. Do we get anybody in the public that wants to speak? Nope.
Okay, then
That was
I
easy.
move we continue the public hearing.
When we close,
Done.
don't, yep, oh.
Wanna- You want to just close the public hearing?
Yeah, might as well.
Because
you
if
still-
they're gonna
That
come,
meeting
You
is
still need to look at more plans.
yeah, if we're gonna look at more plans, I think we
Jewish holiday.
probably need it open.
But my client, that October 9th works. I
Okay.
just had to double check.
Why don't we just continue then?
Okay, I would move that we continue the public hearing until October 9th, and,
We got a second? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I
We'll
appreciate
see you in a
your
month.
time. We'll see you in a month.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now, what are we doing with this, the new business there, Nan? You wanna throw your little thing there that we're gonna postpone till the spring?
Well, yeah.
Why don't we take and just put it off until we get a full meeting on? I know, just give a concept of what you're talking about and we'll move on.
And
You
I
know,
think the
after,
applicant, the way she was talking, she understands that.
yeah, we may miss an
We talking about
opportunity,
something on
but,
the agenda
Yeah,
right
you're
now?
not talking about something that anybody's
no,
aware of.
we're talking
So-
about new
Just trying to figure out what
business.
you're talking about.
Talking
Talking
about new
about the,
business, and the new business is,
Be listed though, prior to being.
I thought we could put new business on.
You can't just cover anything under new business. It's not like
Okay.
that. We have town council here. He can let you know.
Correct.
That's correct.
So just put this on, let us know what the agenda item is for the next meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do that. No, then we're gonna,
yeah.
the agenda is for the,
For a proposal, proposed zoning bylaw modification
Okay, just
To-
let us know what it is.
Okay.
to the proposed town meeting article on planned open spaces.
You're trying to initiate a
I'm
new
trying
article
to, I'm
for
trying
fall
to
town meeting?
initiate, well, I would have liked to, but I don't believe that I have the support to take it to fall town meeting.
You can't get
Okay,
to fall
alright.
town meeting at this point.
Well, we could as a special town, concurrent special town meeting, we could get to,
All right, but you've talked
effectively.
among,
yeah.
you don't feel
But-
as though it's ready yet? Okay.
okay.
It
We'll
may be
get-
ready,
get
but
that-
it's not.
Get that on for the next meeting, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I
Get
think we're
around,
gonna
all
have
right.
to.
So now we got, we're gonna adjourn the regular meeting.
We'll do
Oh,
minutes.
yeah. If you
Oh,
guys-
we got minutes, sorry about that.
And I didn't print them because I was busy printing your other package.
All right.
Did you
Well,
guys?
I've read them all. Has
have you read
everybody here
them?
read them?
I've
Yeah, I
read them all.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
What's the dates we got?
The
14th and
14th and the 28th.
14th and the 28th, we want
Move we
motion.
accept the minutes of August 14th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we accept the minutes of August 28th, 2019.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Good, that's done. Adjourn, and then we're gonna go to executive session.
You have to adjourn, roll call.
Roll call?
Executive
So
session for
you
roll
have, you have to vote roll call to go into executive
Go
session.
into
and-
executive,
And you do need to announce that you will not be returning to open meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So, we're gonna go by roll call to adjourn and go to executive session. Nan,
Need a motion.
I need a motion, all right.
I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation.
And not return.
And
Not return, okay, we got a
Second.
vote second. Nan,
Yay.
In
Mike,
favor, yes.
Mike,
Aye.
Glenn, aye. Henry, aye.
Tim, I.
Kim, aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.
And somebody,
All right.
can somebody kill the
The mics.
the
Yep.
tapes?
Mike's.